Hello everyone. Today is Friday the 22nd of April 2016. My name is Chris Ellis and I'm here today before I go on hiatus to do a last show with Dustin from BTC Art Gallery, and this is one of the most magnificent pieces of work that he's got up on his website, and today we're going to talk a little bit about what he's trying to achieve with the art gallery and trying to promote art within Bitcoin. So today's show is called The Art of Bitcoin. And yes, as I say, this probably will be the last show that I do for a while. Tatiana also wants to do one with me, and if we can arrange something, I'll do one with her. But otherwise, this will be my last show for the time being, so I'm in a lot of pain. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce the man himself. How are you doing, buddy? How are you doing?
There we go. Okay. Hi, how's it going?
Good, good. So I want to, probably if you're watching this, you already know about BTC Art Gallery because you've got quite a lot of fame already in the space, right? But let me just pull up the page so that everyone can see what we're talking about. So the links are in the description below. And basically, if I understand rightly, what you do is you collect all kinds of artwork as and when you see them appear across the interwebs, and you upload them to your website, btcartgallery.com, where they can be showcased, and they can be videos. You've got a wonderful poem here by Bitcoin Errorlog, who's one of my favorite people, and I love Satoshi, and all of this stuff. So what are you trying to achieve with this project?
I have no idea, actually. I thought I knew when I started, and then I kept changing my mind as I did it. And then, see, I should have had like a really well thought out response to
That's
this.
actually a very good answer. That's a
Oh,
very
is
good
it?
answer. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
good.
Saying you don't know is actually really honest, I think that's great.
Because when I started, I just saw I was involved with the little mining groups and such, and I was like at the end of the first wave of adoption or something. And so I was too late for everything interesting, and all that was left was like little old-time scammers who were still running around trying to scam each other through Bitcoin talk and forum boards. And so I got involved with that, and that wasn't a lot of fun at all. No, that was the opposite of fun. I just was collecting stuff, and you see all these Bitcoin pictures. They all actually just come from RSS feeds. Honestly, and most of them come from RSS feeds or Google image searches, or the most basic things. We already have all those tools. So I just used the tools because I collected these images. It's really weird now that I think about it. The images actually just started piling up on their own. I was just saving pictures, and then I plugged in different feeds, and they just pile up. And there was no organization to them, and I would often think of or try to share a picture with someone, and then if I wouldn't actually have it, so I'd have to try to think of the context I saw it in, and that never worked. So I started saving pictures I liked, and then that piled up. And then after a while, I noticed no one. They were kind of sharing the art on Reddit. You remember the early days, the middle days of Bitcoin Reddit, where
The
there was
Middle Ages, the
memes.
famous Middle Ages, yeah.
Yeah, when a good meme was upvoted, 700 times,
Yeah.
700 upvotes in a day, and the next clever saying became like a wave. Like everyone repeated it for like a week. Remember the
Yeah.
what is it? The gentleman. This is gentleman phase. So that's
I want to go to your screen one sec. I love this Behold the Wonder of Permissioned Blockchains with R3, the course driving that car. That's great.
oh this
Pull that one up.
um,
That's great. How many columns you got there? You got 6 columns?
6. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to pull up a 6 column view as well.
Do the no text if you want to just see the pics, but the normal 6 column has the titles and artist names, of course.
Right, right. Okay, I'm just going to go no text then because this is fantastic. I'm seeing so much good stuff here. And one of the things I think is important to note is that every great civilization is remembered because of its art. It's through the art that we remember. And really, the art is a symbol of surplus. It's a symbol of the fact that you've got more than enough capacity to be able to pay the artist, because of course we don't have to pay for art. It's not like buying a house or a car where, you know, someone can come along and say, well, you know, I'm going to sit on this toll bridge, and if you want to cross my bridge, you know, you're going to have to pay for it. With art, you know, artists want their work to be shared, and so they don't exert this kind of rent side pressure, economic rent, you know, where you come in and you say, before you can have this, you must pay. Money is the precondition on which you must get access to something. Whereas with art, you know, artists just want to be heard, and everyone, I think, has a certain need to be listened to. And I think art is one of the great ways of expressing that. And this is, I'm just going to pull up one of my favorite pieces here. It's a great, you know, form of expression. This is very relevant. This is kind of like how I responded to Bitcoin when I first got into it. I just heard about Bitcoin and I'm here to fix it. I just find these so, they make you laugh and they make you think. That's what I like about them. I think they're fantastic. And so, yeah, you're promoting art in Bitcoin and you're trying to raise awareness with it. And your website is pro-tip ready as well, which is great. You've got the header with the Bitcoin address in it.
Yeah, simple steps. I can follow the simple steps.
Yeah, and what is that you're showing? I know what it is, but you tell for the benefit of our audience.
Oh, this is the this one is the Bitcoin full node,
Right.
made by. It's an artistic Bitcoin full node by Daniel Alos and Brenda Fernandez. No chance of pronouncing that. I don't know a lot of Spanish names where I live.
Were they responding to my full node project, or was it just a coincidence?
I think it came out right after that podcast that you made where you were talking about your full node project. So I think you inspired them to do this.
That's great.
It's quite large, actually. I thought it was much smaller in the original pictures, but they used a full laptop frame for the lighting, and so I hope you can see that well on YouTube. I never know how well resolution this is going to show up.
Yeah, it really depends on bandwidth, but it looks good from here.
But they just recently put the bit bonkers. They just changed the screen for the node counter to this. I don't know if you've seen bit bonkers yet. I don't know if I'm going to be able to see bit bonkers. Here we go.
That's cool.
So this is a blockchain. This is showing you transactions, Bitcoin transactions in blocks. And this fascinatingly.
So each one of those things is a transaction, those balls that are falling.
Yeah. Yep. Let's
and
see,
the block height, that's the latest block height, is it? 454?
408, 454, yes. And then the size of the blocks, so you get little blocks, you get large blocks. The green ones are 10, 1 to 10 Bitcoin. Orange is 10 to 50. 50 to 100 is yellow. Blue is 100 to 1,000, and purple, which we haven't seen here, is 1,000 Bitcoins and up in a single transaction.
Incredible. How do they get all the physics of this? Like, how does that all work? Like, that blue one's just falling off there. Like, how does that work? Oh, it's not.
He's using, I believe, a new library. Is it? Oh God, I looked it up at the time, and it reminded me of what NVIDIA was doing, but I don't think it is NVIDIA. It's really amazing, though. I like it.
Well, anyway, it's very clever. I mean, it's really good. I really like that.
So that's what is now displaying on that painting.
Okay.
The painting node.
Fantastic. This needs
Mhm.
more exposure. Do you remember the sounds of Bitcoin? Do you remember there was listen to
Yeah.
Bitcoin? Is that
Yeah.
still going?
Yes. Sounds of Bitcoin. There's a bunch of new selections that you can tweak it, so you can get like different musical instruments now. Uh, so there's more tweaks now. Oh, I can't zoom
Listen.
in.
Is it listen? That's it.
But listen, yeah.
That's great. You see, this is what makes me believe in this revolution, is like this movement is that this is, I mean, I can't play the sound, unfortunately, I'm on my headphones, but you can go to bitlisten.com and you can listen to Bitcoin. I just think it's incredible.
There's a instrument in Russia. If you type in into my search here, it'll bring it up. There's a musical instrument in Russia that is a robot that plays kind of like a harp, sort of, to each Bitcoin transaction. So there's a physical manifestation of BitListen in Moscow.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that strange?
Mm.
Moscow, where Bitcoin is so controversial right now. There's a robot playing a musical instrument. I don't remember its name off the top of my head, but I type in instrument, probably bring it up. Yeah, so it's great to have you in the gallery. I wanted to know what you thought and your first impressions was, and what you thought what I did wrong, what I could work on, and then but what because there's also, you know, mind controlling propaganda in here. I think about that a lot. There's images here which are designed to uh, thought manipulation, essentially. Propaganda, the basest. World War II type propaganda
Yeah, yeah.
is actually really popular. Like retro propaganda is really popular in the Bitcoin space.
But
They like.
that's because we're post propaganda now, because enough people know what propaganda is that it doesn't have the same effect it used to, because we're not in North Korea. Right, if you live in North Korea, then propaganda is still that World War II style propaganda, because you don't know any better. But outside, it's now become a parody of itself. You know what I mean? Like, so it might be controlling you, it might not, but the point is you know it when you see it. I think that's the difference.
So you're telling me that you could easily discern propaganda out of the gallery?
Yeah. I mean, to some extent, it's nearly all propaganda. Like there was one where there was like a cartoon of somebody saying, "Has our Bitcoin lost touch? No, it must be the community." Like that's clearly propaganda for, you know, our BTC and other sort of competitive Reddit, you know, things.
I wanna see the ones you think are the most propagandistic versus the
Well,
ones that are true of intention.
to some extent, they're all props, right? So they're all propaganda to, you know, depending on how you want to define it.
Because I've also
And
got anti-Bitcoin stuff in here too.
Mhm, mhm.
I've put some anti-Bitcoin stuff in here just to mess with people,
Right,
you know.
but that's of course a very political thing to do, because then what you're sort of doing a double bluff, aren't you? Where you're sort of saying, well, I'm going to put some anti-Bitcoin just for balance, you know.
Right.
But
I have fiat art. That's my newest section. I made a little section for fiat.
I think anything, whether it's an Olympic ceremony or whether it's an art piece, can all be used as propaganda if what you're trying to do is use it as a prop in order to influence someone's thought process or decision making. And so to some extent, everything in here is a form of propaganda. Even the website itself is a form of propaganda. But
Right. Yeah.
propaganda does not equal bad anymore,
So is
because
all
now,
art propaganda?
no, it depends on how it's used.
Oh, well, but when you make the art initially, that you imagine something.
I might need to remind myself of the definition of propaganda. One sec.
I think I'm using the common definition of propaganda, in which like it's a dirty.
Propaganda is a form of biased communication aimed at promoting or demoting certain views, perceptions, or agendas. Okay, so
That's really generic.
yeah, it's very generic.
Like for example, here this is the Song Dynasty's Zhao, whatever, I can't pronounce that word. World's earliest paper money is this right here. This is the earliest paper money that ever existed. And it's two. Whoops, see what I get. It's like two serf peasant dudes hanging out in front of a gate, and like some other dude maybe. And it's essentially showing like the style and the architecture, and it's gonna have some sort of country state official seal and a signature or whatever. That's propaganda. That's state propaganda, because if this is what they're using as money, then our money's no different now, right? But
Yeah.
But this is amazingly artistic here. This tiny little drawing that they took the time out to make that, you know, that's where I get confused about what is. Leonard Nimoy, right before he died, said that propaganda is not art. And I took that to heart because I was in the middle of making this gallery. And
okay, I
made
see
me
what you
think
mean.
about it.
I mean, propaganda can be artistic, and you can commission artists to produce propaganda like the Soviets did, and like they still do in North Korea, where they make those big bronze statues of the dear leaders. But that's really is a kind of hero worshipping, and it also,
we've got that.
Right. But I think that in the West now we're beyond that point of, I think we know when to recognize a piece of, like, you know, deliberately trying to just sway my opinion with some bias. You know, like all those kind of like Rothbardian, Randian Twitter accounts, right, where they show like a cartoon avatar and it's like, you know, a picture of Rand or something, and then she's like going on about property rights and all this shit. And then all that account seems to do is piss off people that already disagree with her and start a flame war, or attract all the people that already agree with her. But well, the one thing it doesn't do is persuade people that are undecided, or people that are maybe, you know, not really into politics. Oh, Ayn Rand's really cool, I might get into her, because that's simply not how people make their decisions when it comes to political views. People get influenced in really subtle ways. It's not usually because they viewed a propaganda account on Twitter that they suddenly decide that property rights should be the rubric through which we decide how to organize, you know, a civilization. It's normally because they're off searching for something, and then they stumble across this one article or this one comment on a thread, and they take a line or something resonates with them, and then they forget, and then they take on the belief, and then they forget why they brought on that belief, and then they carry it with them, and they forget why they ever formed it, but then they keep defending it and keep trying to find evidence that reinforces it, because they don't want to admit that they made a bad decision once when they went onto a forum and read this post, right? Because of course you're always making good decisions when you go on the internet. So I think that we're sort of beyond propaganda now, to the point where anyone can propagandize and anyone can promote. But as consumers, or at least recipients, or the audience members, I think we know when we're being lied to, and I think deep down we know how to detect authenticity, which is why marketing firms are finding it increasingly difficult to engineer the social aspect. I mean, look at like Ethereum, you look at, you know, Ascribe, you look at all of the Blockstack, all of these companies that depend on network propagation or Metcalfe's law in order for their business model to succeed. Eris Industries, another one, R3, possibly another one. They all need a network effect to get big. And the reason why I think they're going to fail is because if you try to be big in this day and age, when people have got so much discretionary attention and they can get their information from so many different diverse range of sources, it'll just fail, because people will see that you've got the greater need. The audience members will see, okay, you're pumping out this PR press statement saying that you've done a deal with Microsoft Azure Cloud or whatever, and I see that Microsoft are desperate to look cool because they haven't been trendy in a long time, and I'm kind of not falling for it. And then they've got to like pump out some more information, and then hopefully the price will go up, but then eventually the price goes down, and everyone's like, and the problem with this is that it comes across as insincere, and so then the value of authenticity rises, and people start to really appreciate someone who just tells it how it is just really straight down the line with them, and they don't try to capture or own anything. What we're really in the business of doing at the moment with Bitcoin is We're in the business of creating a new language. We're in the business of, helping people make better decisions, giving people a good, predictable framework, like, 21 million coin cap supply, a certain block size limit which will work on certain latencies and bandwidths across the world. We're giving people a way of finding stability in a world of volatility. The world has always been a very volatile place. It always was. The state kind of covered that up to some extent through taxation and through wars that it would wage elsewhere so that the citizenry could feel safe on their home territory. But the truth is that there is no escaping the fact that political borders are artificial borders, and that they require an infinite amount of energy to uphold unless they're natural boundaries. And as a result, what we're seeing is the state struggling to justify its own existence, struggling to keep itself alive, as more of its employees leave and go off into private enterprise and start forming, startups and working on their own. And we're going to need a new framework for organization in this future. And I think that's what we're in the process of developing now with Bitcoin. And this art is a reflection of that. I think it's a bewitchment. I think it is people, when you learn about Bitcoin, you either love it or you hate it. It either threatens something that you believed and you're not willing to let go of, or it inspires you and totally takes over and besots you because something in it resonates. This idea of not forgetting, of persisting forever, an eternal record, and I think it gets to something very primal inside of us, and it starts to trigger lots of ideation, like that art piece I showed where it's like, I just learned about Bitcoin and I'm here to fix it. This is the idea of participatory design, participatory politics. Like, what I was watching Noam Chomsky the other night, because I love to watch people I disagree with, and he starts off with this gambit about how the state is better than a corporation because the state has the potential for change, because we can vote and so on. And one of the problems I had with his argument was, well, first of all, what you're really talking about, Noam, is you're talking about monopoly. You're talking about bigness. The state has a monopoly on violence. Companies have monopolies, like Microsoft used to have one on the operating system and the one on the browser. The difference is that in a corporate sphere, monopolies come and go because they're time bound. The problem with the state is that it doesn't lose its monopoly and control over its people, and because it can just terrify them. That's where the word territory comes from terria. And so I think...
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I did a whole show on that. So it's really about whether or not the whole political system at the moment that we have is designed to avoid catastrophe at all costs. That's why we have settlement systems like democracies where you settle for a vote and you outsource your decision making to someone else. Or we have a market system, right, where you settle on market price discovery and you say, okay, I will not come to blows or fight anyone if I get to have a say here. And the difference between democracy and markets is in a democracy everyone has equal amplitude, and in a market everyone has varying amplitude. And so you put those two together, and what you get is hopefully a society that is, gives some stability to the citizenry, where they're not, constantly facing violence and conflict, and you've got all these kinds of things. The problem is that now information travels so quickly across space-time, it becomes harder and harder to justify these huge central points of failure like government. And also the political professional elite start to look undermined when other people start to innovate outside of their sphere of influence, like people like Satoshi, who just created Bitcoin. He didn't ask permission, he just went ahead and did it, and now it's extant. They can't decommission it easily, right? They tried. Mike Hearn said that Bitcoin is dead, that it was an experiment, but now it's failed. He sold all his Bitcoins. I think it got down to $380. It's now at $450 or something like that.
I have the audio. Someone did a reading of that. His paper. Yeah. I put that in here.
But it was a nice try. I mean, on his part to try and, have his little tantrum and try to fail Bitcoin. But of course, it's not going to work.
Have you seen the Satoshi part of the gallery?
No.
Okay. Go under the menu for arts, and then Satoshis on there. That's the one I would be most interested in hearing your thoughts of, because that's the one that gets visited, of course, the most, because that's what people wonder about is the creator. And if so, you say Mike Hearn, for instance. How is Mike Hearn's leaving different than Satoshi's leaving?
Well, first of all, Mike Hearn left by throwing his toys out of the pram, and he did a big press statement, and he got into a leading broadsheet in America. And
he
so it was all very...
shopped it around to the New York Times first.
Yeah. So I mean, Mike Hearn is a project manager. Bitcoin J is the copyright is owned by Google, 2011. I suspect it was his 20% time project, but I'm not sure. This romantic story that he wants us to believe about how he sacrificed so much for Bitcoin, about how he cared about it so much, is less a story about whether or not that's true, and is more a story about how he responded emotionally to conflict. The problem with Mike was that he doesn't know how to deal with difficult conversations. He doesn't know how to deal with conflict. And so when he had a set of opinions and views that conflicted with what other people believed, what his peers believed, he found it difficult to cope with that. And his only way of responding was to try and do the most extreme thing that he could think of, which was to present a hard fork scenario, which, you know, even by his own admission, would lead to technical complications, which he mentioned in Epicenter Bitcoin video he did, where he said, well, look, you know, we might be forced to start checkpointing blocks. We might be forced to, you know, if the economic majority shift back to the old chain whilst we're in the process of transition, we might have to start checkpointing. And we might have to start telling miners that this is the block they need to mine from, which of course sets a dangerous precedent, because now you're not choosing the longest proof of work chain, which of course entirely undermines the protocol itself. Now what you've done is you've said, hey, I've invented a kettle, but I'm just going to rip the filament out for a minute. You've just ripped the filament out of the kettle. You know that's not a kettle anymore, right? Like, you've just destroyed existentially what it is. Whereas Satoshi didn't do that. Satoshi just left. He just didn't respond anymore. His responses became less frequent, I think, after Gavin did the meeting at the CIA, where he went to give a presentation there. And I think after that, Satoshi just started to drift away from the project. Now, for all we know, Satoshi is still here. He's just not, you know, using a different pseudonym or something like that. It could just be somebody in the community. I very much doubt that Satoshi left. I'm almost certain that he or she is watching from afar, if not closer.
Do you believe the rumors? And I have Craig right here in my gallery.
I don't believe it. I don't believe anyone. First of all, I don't think it's all that important as to who it is, but I don't believe that anyone claiming to be Satoshi is Satoshi. I think it would be very difficult for you to prove that you are Satoshi now, because he never used PGP. Even if you were able to move some really old Coinbase transaction from, you know, 6 years ago, whatever, I still think it's going to be a tough sell for you to persuade people that
Oh, absolutely, but you could do it.
Yeah, I just don't. You know, first of all, you're talking about the biggest tax evader of all time. Like, the amount of tax evasion this guy would be done for just on its own, like, let alone all the other things that governments would want him for, particularly the US government would want him for. Now that the project is extant and it's out there and it's in the public domain, nobody owns it. The law doesn't have the mechanisms to deal with it. All governments really exist. The reason it's called a state also compares statistic, stateful, as in when physics, when we talk stateful environments, like hard drives, a stateful environment. What we're really talking about is the conditions upon which we allow the state to transition. We allow the state of play to change, the status quo to change. Governments historically don't like change, because they are not made up of engineers. They're made of policy wonks. They're made of professional politicians who've got a career and they need to get promoted. And as Machiavelli lays out very well in The Prince, he lays out the mechanisms where you can divorce ethics from politics, because at least before that, officially, if not in practice, ethics and politics were intertwined, right? You had to make good decisions. Ethics, ethos, comes from the word ethos. It means, it's actually, if you look at the etymon, it's ethnos, which means origin, ethos, ether. to be out of reach, to be far away. Ethos and your ethics are really the way you bring your origins to your ideas, right? And the practice, the normative ethics, the everyday morality of how you, yes, you might say in theory in a thought experiment that if there was a train running down the track and you could save 5 people on the train or the 1 person lying on the track, would you pull the lever? That's just theory. But what do you do when the rubber hits the road? What do you do in practice is a very different question, and that's politics. Politics is about what do we do now given the balance of power. Well, the problem with politics as a tool for change is that, first of all, we're already a political animal whether we like it or not. Let me give you a practical example. This sentence is not political. That is a very political thing to say. And what you notice is that you can't not be political, no matter how hard you try as a human, because as Aristotle noted, we are a political animal. So why are we turning politics into an entire industry? Why do we have this whole theatrics and, a bunch of people shouting each other over, these expensive, furniture in these big halls in the capitals of our countries? Why, if politics is our innate quality, why fixate on it? Why turn it into a big deal? Why not try to redress that balance by using tools like ethics, like using tools like engineering, philosophy, good decision-making, critical thinking, and try to think longer term? And I think the answer is that some people that have a controlling mindset, that want to control other people, find it easier to negotiate themselves in a world where politics is the main device that is used to enact change and to make change. But as we've said already, like the British government that invented the limited company so that people could go off and build bridges, well, the British government didn't have the internal competence to build the bridges and build railways, so it had to grant the citizen, the private citizen, with the same power that state had, which was the limited liability company. That is to say that you would lose the maximum only of the amount of capital that you put into the business as your maximum risk exposure. What did that do? Well, the state has a sovereign in particular has a very particular quality over a citizen. The sovereign has the ability to pardon themselves, and this is Carl Schmitt, the Nazi jurist, the Third Reich jurist, who was commenting on Tolstoy. Tolstoy said that the sovereign is he who defines the urgency. So sovereigns make things urgent for you. They masquerade as nature. Remember,
man, this is not what I think about at all when I look at Bitcoin art. You're going into Tolstoy and the heart of man's nature.
Because what we're talking about with Bitcoin, but what we're talking about with Bitcoin is a permissionless system and a way of governance, right? So everyone abides by it. So this is very much.
You look at Bitcoin art and you see politics.
No, I don't see politics. I can't. First of all, like I said, you can't not be political.
Well, I, for instance, didn't know what I was doing was libertarian until a bunch of libertarian art started showing up in my gallery.
First of all, libertarian means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. In America, it means something different in Europe. But what I'm trying to say is that what the state required was, because it didn't have the competence to go out and build bridges, it wasn't an engineering, it wasn't innovative, it needed to grant its ability. So Carl Schmitt said that the government has the ability to write the rules and the exceptions to those rules. In other words, has the ability to pardon itself for its crimes. And what the limited company does is it gives people the ability to pardon themselves for their debt. So when you run a company into the ground and it can't pay its creditors as they fall due, as the credits fall due, then it's in trading insolvent, it has to go through liquidation, and those are written off. It's limited liability. The people in that company don't have to be personally liable for those debts. That's what the government gave out. So when you're running a limited company, you're sort of, in a way, running a branch of government. You're working on behalf of the government. Mussolini lays that out in The Institutions of Fascism in his book in 1935, where he says that the acts of companies is actually under the auspices of the state, because essentially you're working for the state when you're running a company, because you're on our territory. We gave you the fertile ground to work on. We gave you all the laws and protections and the police and the railways and the infrastructure to make your business a possibility. You owe us, and when you work for us, and if you start to do things out of line, we have absolute power to come in and tell you what to do. Well, we haven't really moved away from that fascist paradigm, right? Because nowadays banks have to pander to governments and they have to jump through loopholes. But we all know
That's
that
ancient.
the
That's
best,
really ancient.
but the
The
best
systems you're
way,
talking about.
the best way to commit fraud is to do it in plain sight. The best way to commit fraud is to never lie. The best way to commit fraud is to do everything by the book, because the regulators are not there to think. They're there to exact whatever is written on the piece of paper. So when you go to accountancy school or you go to business school, you're not learning how to help your future bosses make moral decisions. You're there to help them break the rules without getting caught. In fact, ideally, you would tell them don't play a game unless you know you can cheat. You know, find a cheat sheet before you even get engaged. Write the terms of agreement before you get in. Well, how do you mean it's ancient?
Oh well, the way that started to get organized early on, that's that's a that's an easy system. That's an easy system because it preys on people's weaknesses. So it's easy to get going. It's easy to maintain because it gets challenged all the time because obviously it's not the best system. People don't want that system, but it's easy to set up, and that's how it was set up. Like in ancient times. I mean, how do you think they built the walls of Ur? Right? They obviously didn't arrive at that probably cooperatively, and maybe they did. Maybe they did. Maybe that was a unique moment or something. But I always think those problems are inherent to humans. I wonder if they're escapable at all because I like the way you're going with your talk, but now I'm actually on the podcast with you. I have to say that I don't know if I believe that. I don't know if there is a better system. I wonder if humans aren't so flawed and primitive because we are animals. I don't know if we can escape the animal. Because that's what you sound like when you talk to me about politics. Politics often feels to me like less like it feels more like nature, than something separate. Like,
Well, animals don't engage in politics for the reason that they don't have the ability. Well, first of all, you need a few things. You need language. You
but
need
isn't politics just
organization.
really sophisticated animal behavior?
You could put it like that. You could put it like that. But remember that politics requires reflection. Politicians posture, don't they? They talk about things that have happened and talk about things that they would do in order to respond to that
right.
new
Well,
thing that's
they talk about stuff,
yeah.
and they try to talk about stuff to make people like them.
Yeah.
Animals have attractive songs. They peacock around to get attention, because if we're an animal that elects one leader, like steer do this, cows do this, they all follow the same cow, and they follow the cow they like the most, right?
But
That's not politics.
I don't see like many cows going to war with each other. Do you?
There are animals that go to war with each other. Ants are a great example. The creatures that are forced into small resource niches, right, are extremely competitive with each other and will gang up. Ants will even take slaves. Ants will enslave other ants.
Oh, so like Stalinist ants.
Yes. Yep. Stalinist ants. So are those ants political if they're taking prisoners and forcing them to work for them?
Well, I would say yes. It's a very primitive form of politics from our standards, as a tool builder, as a language speaker, as a talking animal. But yeah, to steer this back into what you're saying, I think that arts can be used as a form of propaganda. But to take your original quote, I think you're right that it might actually stop being art once it becomes propaganda. I think that art, though, really is an unveiling. It's as Heidegger talked about the aletheia, I think it might be pronounced, ancient Greek word, which just means an uncovering. It means like the truth is revealed over time. That time is the only thing that can stand in the way of truth. And the art attempts to uncover. And art for me is really about courage and creativity. Because with courage you find your originality. And with creativity, you voyage off and explore into new territory that you wouldn't go if, let's say, you were just a business person, right? Because in business, you have to make very controlled, calculated risks, and you shouldn't do anything too wild. Well, the problem is that, you know, like with my full node project, right, where most of these have now gone out, if I made a mistake, right, I could just say, well, look, it's part of the art. Whereas if I've been doing this as an official business and I'd have like my startup metrics and I'd had my slide deck, if I made a mistake, I'd have got fired, I would have gone bankrupt, you know, I'd have had to take out personal guarantee loans with the bank, and the VC would have walked off and left me with all the debt and all of this kind of stuff. And so yeah, art is really, I think, the ultimate form of expression, because as artists we can say things that business people can't say, politicians certainly can't say. And it breeds authenticity, and I think authenticity is scarce right now. And actually, I've been thinking about this a lot, and I actually think that love and authenticity, even if it were abundant, would still be valuable, because you are the scarcest thing on the planet. You are an expert at being you. Nobody else can be you. The harder they try to be you, the further away from being you that they will become, because eventually they'll just become a caricature of you. They will actually never just stop being them trying to be you. And this is the problem, you see. Even if they get 99% of the way there, well, 99 to the power of 4 for every 4 attempts they try to be you, you see, that just means they're going to get further and further and further away. They're never really going to be you. And the problem with business that we have at the moment is I do not see an appetite for risk. I don't see an appetite in the startup Silicon Valley space for VCs to really take risks. And by risks, I mean early stage investment, right? I mean actually, like, you know, looking at the vision, the philosophy of what we're trying to do and saying, actually, this is really risky, but we're gonna take a leap of faith here. Now, what they want to see are metrics, key performance indicators. They want to see you coming back. And of course, all of that pressure gets priced into the product offering. So if you're working and you're living in a nice swanky flat in London or in Silicon Valley or wherever, that all your cost of living gets priced into the products you're selling. And if you're selling a product that's free at the points of use, there's a hidden cost. And at the moment, that hidden cost is advertising. And that advertising, to me, is not only anti-capitalist, it's also anti-art, because advertising constantly recruits creatives, artists, to try and trick people into giving them their attention when they otherwise wouldn't have. And I know, because I used to work in advertising, or at least alongside it, and I saw what it did to a lot of really good artists. It really corrupted them, and they felt prostituted and they felt dirty, you know, after doing it.
Yeah, that was one of the topics I did want to talk to you about whether or not the prostitution of corporate art issue has occurred yet, or are we pre that? Because I think it kind of has occurred, because some of the art has been generated by companies, but it's in such a small quantity, and it's done so not seriously, that I can't say it's reached that level yet. But we have artists who do that regularly coming into the space, and I see them, and they show up, and they have, like, they do one thing. You know what I'm talking about here. You take this, because I'm mixed on this topic, because I think about it way too much.
Well, I think a lot of corporations are, in fact, anti-free market and anti-competition in market spaces, in the sense that they don't really want to see innovation, because innovation disrupts their status quo. Once you get to a certain size where you're big enough to exist without really surviving in a Darwinian sense, like you're not adapting in order to survive, you're just kind of trundling along. You think of like Nokia, Microsoft, Apple. These are very large companies that have huge cash reserves. They have no idea what to do with the money. They don't need to do anything. I mean, they could, like Max Kaiser says, just pay their staff more, but they don't. So they just kind of trundle along, and then as soon as somebody comes along with a competitive edge, they just buy them out, and then sunset that, and then just, you know, they become
but that doesn't work real well here in this space.
No, it doesn't, because anyone can have. And nobody needs to ask permission. Like, I didn't need to ask permission to make the Bitcoin full node. I just went ahead and made it. And I didn't make any changes to the consensus when I made Protip with Leo. So Protip is technically a fork of Bitcoin, except we didn't do the dick move of trying to change the block size or trying to do anything like that inside of it. And so it still gets accepted. But what we were trying to do was we were trying to get people to rethink their behavior and get them to reassess, like, what does it mean to be a participant in this global network of networks, which is what the internet is. The internet is different to other networks because it's a network of networks, not just a network of people. And what do we mean by a network? Well, a network is just other people, right? It's just, you're just meeting people that you know, via this network, and the information itself becomes the value through which it flows. And people in this type of autonomous network, self-directed network, are not mere cogs in the machine. This isn't Leninist Russia where, you know, propaganda is spewed out and people just pass along the propaganda to their neighbors and so on. This is about people receiving information, cognizing, thinking about it, regurgitating, and then putting the thing out. I think Amanda Palmer talks about how art is a bit like a mincing machine, right? That you can set the mincer for low, where you know, you put all your ideas, all the different things, the influences that you see out in the world, you put it into a big kind of, you know, grinder. And
that's what I did, literally.
Yeah, exactly. And the granularity of the output, what you pour out, depends on the setting that you apply. So sometimes you said you can put a really fine setting to the point where you can't even find out what the ingredients were. It just becomes a big mush. Or you could do what you've done where it's more granular. It doesn't stop being art because curation is creation. You're a curator. It was.
That worried me. I was worried about that. That's the whole thing where you want to stay back from it so that you retain your subjectivity in some way.
Objectivity, you mean?
Objectivity. What did I say? Yes.
Yeah. But I think you can't escape it. Like, it's like trying to not be political. It's not escapable, and so you just have to live with it. You just have to deal with it. You know, art forces us to respond and to face ourselves in a very honest way. You can't really do art if you're trying to be dishonest and you're trying to trick people, because people just see it for what it is. So I don't, you know, I want to see a world where people can act autonomously, confidently, independently, and I see Bitcoin as being, you know, one of the primary ways in which they can do that, because Bitcoin allows us to communicate our sacrifices to one another at a distance, because we can all recognize that when a coin is reassigned on the network and I push my TX, that a sacrifice has been made and the whole network has witnessed it, and it's undeniable as well. It can't be undone. It's, you know, it's immutable. It's forever, and so it forces us into the seat of life, because we are forced to be faced with the prospect that once I hit send, this is gone. This is forever. It's not like an email where I feel like I'm private and you have this kind of ambiguity of whether or not you're being spied on. You kind of know you're being spied on, but you're not sure whether it's just the metadata, the whole data, and so on. Whereas with Bitcoin, all the rules are made clear for anyone who cares enough to check. That everyone has to play by the same rules. You don't get to cheat. And when you do, everyone knows it's public. And what I think that gives us, it goes right back to Solon and Cleisthenes when they were devising democracy. Cleisthenes, of course, would implement those reforms eventually, was how do I get everyone to agree? How do I stop the mob? How do I stop people from using suicide as a political tool, as a final kind of like, just stop this now, you know, I want my lifestyle, I want my self-determinacy. Well, I have to give them something. I have to give them something that allows them to absolve themselves of, you know, responsibility. They have to be able to say, okay, I was asked to vote on something, I cast my vote, and now my conscience is clear, and I will not come to blows, and I will not fight, even if the outcome is not what I perhaps desired. I will not come to blows. I will not start burning down infrastructure. I will not start killing myself because I was able to vote. And it just allows people to move on with their lives in the same way that I think Bitcoin's mechanism says to you, look, these are the rules. If you agree, take part. If not, that's okay. You can do something else. Hell, the code is even open source. You can fork it and make your own one if you really disagree. And I think people look at it, and when I've met people before that have lost, for instance, their private keys they've taken full responsibility. At no point were they like, oh, that damn Bitcoin company and that CEO. I emailed their customer support ages. I was like, I couldn't get my Bitcoins back. I was so furious. But when you're just dealing with private keys, if you don't look after them, that's your fault. It's between you and nature. And I think that's very profound, and I think it's existential, and I think it forces people to really question themselves and their own competencies. And I think for a lot of people who just didn't learn how to code or didn't even try to learn anything technical over the last 20, 30 years are really now starting to think, shit, I actually kind of need to learn this stuff. I need to become literate. I need to at least be at a position where I understand this cryptography the same way I understand, you know, mechanical engineering when it comes to my car. And I don't think that we're there yet. But I think as a community, we need to make that case to people, because otherwise, yes, you're just going to get, you know, a group of priestly kind of, you know, engineers and technorati that are going to run off with all the control, and in the meantime, the layperson just gets left behind and doesn't really understand what's going on, and you get the ransomware and so forth. And so
well,
I think
that is going to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, the Bitcoin people got out ahead, like quite a distance of the lay person, which is me, and it took me a while to catch up, and I was making a concentrated effort to. So for the casual, I can't imagine what that's like.
But this art helps to articulate and bring it to the public psyche, I think. I think the artwork that you're showing us and that you've done such a good job of collecting in one place gives people an insight into how this works. Because, you know, people learn in different ways. Some people learn really well by listening. Some people like visuals, videos. Some people like reading, some people like talking and interacting, and I think what you've done with the BTC Art Gallery is you've given people a way of choosing how they want to learn about Bitcoin, and that, I think that's important. And for me as an artist, of course, you know, art is about responding to constraints and turning those constraints into variables, and for me, I've tried as hard as I can to create art that can't be framed, that can't be put into a gallery as such or presented as such.
Wait, I did that to you. I framed you and I put you in a gallery.
You didn't.
You're in there.
How am I in there? Show me.
Oh, so go to the menu.
Yeah.
And then go.
Okay. Yeah.
Go to podcasts and shows.
Yeah.
Click on it.
Yeah.
I think you might be page 2.
I'm on 6 layout. Okay, we got Theo. So what I mean by you can't really frame me is that I tried to make the work that I do.
Oh, I know, that's just a terrible joke. I had to make that.
Yeah.
What I've
tried to do is turn my work into like an ongoing, almost like a real life reality kind of TV thing, you know, where I was surveilling myself with the NSA cam, working for actually less than a Chinese factory worker, building the full nodes and wearing the Steve Jobs uniform, going on Max Kaiser, you know, all of these things, sponsored by Russia Today, of course. And so it's, you know, it was really an art piece, but it wasn't an art piece that could be confined to a physical art gallery or could be framed all in one. You couldn't draw a particular line around it because I wanted the art to be borderless. I wanted it to be without boundaries, and I really wanted it to inspire other people and to get people who perhaps were not into Bitcoin traditionally to really stop and make them think about what this movement is, why someone would go to such lengths to do something. Why on earth is somebody competing with a Chinese factory worker when they're living in the West? Why would they, you know, deliberately, you know, take down their lifestyle and so on? And I wanted people to really reflect on it, and it's worked, because, you know, the people that were buying these full notes off me, a lot of them weren't technical people. They were people that would say things like, look, Chris, I'm not technical, I'm a bit older than, you know, the average Bitcoiner, and I just bought this because it looked like such a lovely object, you'd worked so hard on it, and I just wanted to, but now I'm like trying to get it to work, and I spent half an hour trying to get it to work. I love those types of emails because it makes me feel like, oh yes, I'm so glad, because it's kind of what I wanted to do. I wanted new people to start You know, to feel is to understand. And when you have something in your hands and you can hold it and you can say, wow, the whole blockchain is on this tiny little memory stick, and it's on this little computer. It's just so elegant, it's so beautiful, and more importantly, it's in my hands. I can control it. I can, you know, it gives you an autonomy. And I think we're born to be these independent, free-thinking individuals, not to be these kinds of ants in the ant colony that are controlled by some overseeing force, whether that's a corporation like Coca-Cola or somebody with a big advertising budget that wants to sway our opinion, or whether it's a state and its propaganda. I don't care about the distinctions of the language of state and corporate, whatever. If you're big, you've got logos like flags and Starbucks symbols and whatever, I'm sorry, but you're big, you're monopolistic, and unless that monopoly is time-bound, unless it has the capability of decaying gracefully without bringing others to harm in its systemic downfall, I'm afraid I just don't like you very much, and I'm looking for ways to prevent this type of tumor from arising in the first place.
I think some of your stuff fits very well in with my gallery, bound up within the narrow confines of like the Bitcoin art subject. Because yeah, the nodes are art, so I put them in. I made a little category for nodes, so I can fill that up over time. Hopefully, I want you to see your nodes in art objects, art installations, where they could be remotely updated. That would be awesome. But I also found that there's a video of you must have taken that wound up in the gallery.
Yeah, I did that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was at the Hamburg at the CCC where Charlene and I were there, and I gave that 5-minute lightning talk on the full node that went down very well, and we got a lot of people that actually came downstairs afterwards. We had it recorded twice. I did a live stream of it, and someone else did a live stream. Sorry, a recording of it. So yeah, I mean, I you know, like with these full nodes, they're all over the world. They've gone to Thailand, Mexico, South America, India, Botswana, South Africa, New Zealand, obviously England and Europe and America. They've gone to New York, Chicago, the West Coast. They've gone everywhere, man, and I want them to go more. I've still got another 4 I need to go out. I'm slowly winding down now. I'm not on Twitter anymore. This, like I said, will be one of the last ones, but I still have another four of these to hand out, and perhaps another one to sell. I do need to make a little bit more money because, unfortunately, I ran out of money because I did not estimate the cost of shipping to places like India. It cost me £50 to send Samitra's node out because he's in India. I had to FedEx it, right? And FedEx charged £50 for it. That was the cheapest they said they could do it. So I do need to raise probably another £200 or so in the next sort of week or two, just so that I can send out the last ones. And then anyone who gets one, in order to qualify for one, you need to be in a region of the world that isn't well represented at the moment on the Bitcoin network. That's number one. Number two, say hi, get to know us at the World Crypto Network. We're at World Crypto Net on Twitter, and the email address is fullnode@protip.is. And just get to know us. Come and join us in our Slack channel, for example, or just email us or talk to us on air. And we'll get to know you, because really when I send these out, I want them to go to good homes. And I want them to go to people that are going to look after them and nurture them and help them become learning tools. And then hopefully, you know, in the future, if I get better, I've also got some laptops coming, some really cheap, affordable. All they are screens. They're called the Next Dock. They've got screens, keyboards, and a USB, and you can attach a full node to it and turn it into a laptop.
Oh yeah, I saw those in the Slack. Those look really good for that.
Yeah. So I want those because I really want to send those out to like the places in South Africa that I went to see. There's a place in Durban I'm speaking to at the moment.
What is the price on those?
They're $200 for the actual units. But they come down in price a lot when you buy them OEM, you know, like but I've just bought, oh no, I think I bought them for like $100. I'm sorry, $100 each off of the Indiegogo.
Oh, okay, that's way better. Okay.
Yeah, so then with these, they would be $200 together. But I wouldn't use this case. I would take the case off. I would just, you know, use a cheaper, slimmer case. because you can get, got another case somewhere, it's over there, might go grab it. But yeah, you ideally kind of want, this type of case is also good. This is much slimmer, and then this can just like attach. You see that that's much shorter than that one. So we can use, and these are cheaper, these ones. So what I might do is just use this type of design for the laptop, because then it can just attach onto the back, whereas this is more of a standalone. So yeah, it's really just, you know, I sign every single node. Every single node gets the signature, PGP signature from me. Every single one is a one-off. You know, I'm not going to make, I said I'll make a maximum of 500. I really hope I get to do that. And I'm currently at node number 60 now, and it's getting quicker for me to make them. So I just need to take some time out, and then I can come back and start making some more.
How have you seen, you've gotten pictures, right, of the nodes coming back, pictures of people having the nodes set up and such?
Yeah, people tweet them out. I encourage people to tweet out.
Have you seen an interesting installation of where they put the node yet? Something I put in the gallery as an art piece?
Well, I would love people to put it in a gallery as an art piece. I haven't seen that yet, no. Most people just put it on their desks, or they leave it by their router and stuff.
Yeah, it's just that you'd have to string wires. Power might be an issue. Wi-Fi, right? Like these, you want to be transmitting over the Wi-Fi. You probably don't. For an art installation, it's a lot to think about for an art installation, because usually you don't have to keep the thing plugged in all the time.
Yeah, I'm just looking through the troll box now. Everyone on the internet wears huge goggles now. Mad Bitcoins. Trendsetter.
Oh, Gabriel wanted us to know that ants are not individuals. Colonies are the intelligence there. And he's probably right.
Right, okay. So what the colonies, what's he saying?
Ants are not individuals. Colonies are the intelligence. Ants don't have consciousness. The colonies maybe.
Okay, so this is the philosophy. For example, like if I hurt an ant, if I kill an ant, am I hurting the ant or am I hurting the colony? Does the colony feel pain by losing the ant? And the thing about networks is that they are emergent phenomena. Networks are made of individuals acting over time and space and time. And so they form what's called a temporal unity, which means that actually, as we've realized with the internet, a community such as a nation, the word nation comes from the word natality or nature, nate is the lexical root for that, just means to be born. Now, a country, once a nation develops into a country, it really is more about a community, and communities form around a common need, and they share a common horizon. That is, they can all look at and agree on the same shared horizon. They all agree on what they're trying to do, where they're trying to go to, where they're voyaging to. Now, countries can feel a legitimate sense of community, and I believe that people have the ability to voluntarily associate with a group of people that they choose. That is absolutely their prerogative, not a right, a prerogative, an assertion that they can make. When it comes to colonies being the intelligence, I think you're right, but you have to bear in mind the temporal latency between an individual acting in congruence with a group of other individuals all acting in space and time, and then from our point of view as the audience, with a distance from them, we're able to see what emerges. What we see is a colony. We see like a big amorphous blob that appears to be acting in ways that are independent and so forth. But actually what it is a group of individuals all acting together, and what you end up with is more than the sum of the parts. So in emergent complexity theory and from physics, we have separation, alignment, cohesion. So first of all, the individual has to be able to discern itself from others, separation, and then you need to be able to align itself with others. That's how it gets the shared horizon. And then you need the cohesion, and the cohesion comes from the perspective of the outsider, from the other, because there's no real point in talking about networks if you can't perceive the network from outside of it, right? because if you look from inside of the network, things appear very differently than if you're outside of the network. Because, yeah, so like, was it Gödel or whoever who came up with that theory? Oh my God, my mind is not what it used to be because of the migraines. But he said that in order to solve a problem, you'd have to have some variable that had to come from outside in order to solve the problem. You can't solve a problem by purely using only from what's inside of that internal matrices. You have to use something from outside and incorporate it in. In other words, you have to find a way of interfacing with the other in order to grow, in order to expand, right? And I think for me, like, you can do this in one of two ways. You can do this in the sort of Leninist, Stalinist way of trying to grow a massive, expanse across the world, and you're trying to bribe people and kingdoms into joining your ideology. Or you can do a voluntary opt-in, where you say, we've made this scientific discovery, we found that if we put these various cryptographic elements together in a certain sequence, that we get what emerges as this blockchain phenomena, this self-auditing database, this digital scarcity. It has all these wonderful properties. And then other people can join. If they want to, they can join and they can look at it. And indeed, people can fork it and they can create their own blockchains. How many, altcoins have we had now? Quite a lot. And as a result, I think it really behooves the individual to make an informed, responsible decision, which I don't think we've seen before in politics and in the way that we govern ourselves. This really is a constitutional moment in history where we have to decide, all of us have to decide what we're going to do for the next 100 years or more. Like, how do we want to organize ourselves? How do we want to structure ourselves? How does an individual get a voice, get listened to in a world with 7 billion people? It's a very difficult question, but I don't think you can avoid it, because even if you choose to not listen, not pay attention, that's still your decision. That's still what you chose. And that's why I think this is such an important radical thing that is going on, So we passed the 1 hour mark. Charlene, you haven't said anything.
The only thing I wanted to bring up was when you were talking about how artists tell the truth. Is I thought of, it's like one of the most popular quotes from V for Vendetta from Alan Moore, that artists use lies to tell the truth. The folk quote of that is actually that artists use lies to tell the truth while politicians use them to cover the truth up. And then depending on whether you've seen the movie, I've seen it a lot of times, but there's a scene in it where he's tricked her into thinking she was a prisoner. And when she realizes that wasn't the case, then he says, he repeats that line back to her, and he says, artists use lies to tell the truth. Yes, I created a lie, but because you believed it, you found something true about yourself. So I thought of that.
That's very good. I just want to quickly jump in with what Gabriel was saying in the chat, because it looks like I've misunderstood him. So ants do not have individual consciousness. They're more like cells. So he's saying that it wasn't his point, that I was misrepresenting him. So their conflict is not war. Yeah, just the conflict is not war, just a simple fight. So I would say ants do not have politics, as Chris implied. Okay, that's good. But yeah, I mean, my point really was that
I implied they had politics.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they have politics. I was just saying that human beings were not like ants, and we certainly shouldn't be treating human beings as if they were just cogs in a machine. They have to be autonomous agents, because really a state, like we saw with Stalin, who was pretty much denounced by the communist regime, 3 years after he died. Everyone was hating on him. And his body was taken out of Red Square and it was put into a cemetery and all that stuff, is because, they didn't have anything to fear anymore, because the guy wasn't around to execute people, and so they could start telling the truth again, and they could start actually saying, this guy's a nasty piece of work. But what he had done is he'd created a cult of personality. He'd created this kind of, he got rid of all the churches and he destroyed all the synagogues, and so now he's the god, right? Just like Kim Jong-un and all the North Korea, the Kim dynasty in North Korea. You're just trying to create a proxy for a god, and whether that's the free market or whether that's a communist leader or whether it's, you know, a sky bully with a beard. I don't care. The point is that you are outsourcing and giving away your power, right? You're taking power away from yourself and you're giving it to another person. And I think that we need to stop doing that. You need to look at yourself and stop hero worshipping and stop trying to outsource and give your responsibility away to somebody else, and ask yourself, why do you not want to take responsibility for yourself?
Hero worship is a real problem my gallery has. It's an easy trap to fall into, and it's different to see like a painting which is done for somebody because that person appreciates that other person's activities, and it's like charitable, and it's done with good intentions, versus the obsessive compulsive hero worship. It's obvious, like you pointed out, how you can see the obviousness of some of it. Yeah, that's really profound what you said there. I think about that.
Charnine, who is indeed German? What are your thoughts?
Animals do not always fight. Oh,
Charnine, are you there?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry, my internet's going bad. Oh.
Can you say what you
Alright.
wanted to say?
Well, I can't. I don't know if I'm breaking up right now because my internet connection's
Okay.
a bit bad.
Why don't I read out? So what you were saying in the chat here, in the private chat, was I would say that animals purely go to war for resources, whereas humans hide that motivation behind abstracts. Animals don't need the why for the fight. It is the food, the water. Humans appeal to abstracts.
yeah, I would agree with that. That's what art is, the appealing to abstracts.
Yeah. Yeah, and Dan, you're saying, Chris, maybe the big other is the people, and that's correct. I would even go so far as to say that God is other people, right? There's a really good podcast on Entitled Opinion. It's called God is in the Stranger. So God is in the unveiling of the darkness into the light. The identity basically is when somebody goes from being secret to public. And it's that transition to not knowing what that stranger is going to do or how they're going to act or how they're going to behave in a certain scenario. Imagine like when you get into a fight with someone and then you start running all these scenarios in your head, you know, ahead of the next time you're going to confront them, and you start to like imagine the worst case scenario and what you're going to say if they say this. But then when you get there, do you ever notice how it's like never how you imagined? And then afterwards, do you ever like run through counter scenarios where you wish you'd said this certain thing and all of this? I think that's where God lies. God lies, you know, God as in a lowercase g. I'm not theological in any way. Or religious in any way. I'm just talking about it as if it were literature, as if it was something that we can talk about. I think that God for a lot of people is really just the future looking back at them. It's really other people. How do I imagine future generations looking back at us? And that revelatory kind of uncovering over time, where we start to realize how our actions of the past are being uncovered by the new population with their new set of values and their new set of ethics, which are constantly changing over time, then reveals to us, well, I wish I could be remembered differently, because there's nothing I can do now about the past. You know, whatever I did in the past walked away from me. It's there, it's still happening in many ways, but it's impenetrable. I can't get back to it. And I think that the blockchain, with its immutability, its append-only structure, really gets to something very primal, and I think that's why it besotts people so much. It's why it grabs their imagination. It's why people want to come in like the hero and save it and change it in a way that they think will get it more adoption or will help it out in some way. It's because it's something that everyone can contribute to, which is not like the world we have today, where, you know, you have lots of private property and lots of boarded off land, and it's like, well, look, I can customize myself to my heart's content, but I can't change the world outside of me, and yet this is the place that I inhabit. I can't escape it. There's no cure for being on Earth, as the saying goes. So, yeah, I think that Bitcoin allows us to gives us a speech act that no one can deny. Bitcoin doesn't care where you're from. It doesn't care who you are. You can generate a public-private key pair on your computer, and you can broadcast a transaction over the network for very little, very low cost, and that is speech. And it can't be taken away from you. It can't be censored. It can't be removed. It's there forever. And I think that's what we're missing. So look, we're over an hour in.
You're supposed to go to breakfast.
Breakfast?
Yeah, it was in the chat. You're missing breakfast.
Well, it's nearly the evening here now. It's 10 to 6.
Oh.
So yeah.
What did she say then? Oh, they're having breakfast. Oh. Yeah, no, it was great. Thanks for having time to talk to me about Bitcoin art. It's important, I think, to talk about it so that the work gets seen and that people get to hear people's feedback. And your conversation is way too deep for me. I'm gonna have to listen to this again. I had zero chance of being able to understand some of it. I understood some of it. I understood the lower half of it.
Yeah, but I think what you've done is great work. With that website, it really has brought all the art together in one place where people can see it, and I would have not known how much art there was, in this space had it not been for your website. So you've done a great service to the community. It owes you a lot. And of course, it is ProTip ready, that website. So if you are running ProTip, you can go over there and you can send Dustin a tip. And yeah, so thanks very much, man. Thanks for being here.
Oh no, thanks for having me on here and taking interest in this sort of stuff, because without people taking interest in it, it doesn't exist.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Interestingness is what makes the world go around. I'm pretty sure I'm not the first person to say that. I think someone famous said it. Maybe William James.
You're taking a Bitcoin break here. I'm probably going to be taking a Bitcoin break from the overexhaustion of too much of it.
Yeah.
Are you going to be around for the halving?
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm not going anywhere physically. I'm not going to be able. It hurts me to actually physically talk, and I'm on medication now, which is making me very zombie-like, and so I need to take a hiatus. I don't know how long that's going to be, but I am with you in spirit. I'm not going anywhere, and yeah, I just hope to be back as soon as I can. And of course, Janine, my lovely girlfriend, wonderful girlfriend, has got a really good GitHub repo where she's keeping up to date on all of my health things. So you can see my Twitter at Mr. Chris Ellis for updates on that. I won't be posting tweets for the time being, because I don't want to start conversations and then go down rabbit holes in conversations on Twitter. I'm just trying to avoid that kind of thing, because it's just, it takes a lot of energy. And so yeah, no videos, no tweeting for a while, but I will be here. I'm not leaving you in spirit, and obviously going to be witnessing the halvening, and hope to be back very shortly. Like I say, still have another 4 or 5 of these to give away. So if you're in a part of the world that doesn't have good, representation on the blockchain, if you're in a region of sub-Saharan Africa or in West Africa, or if you're in South America, or somewhere like this, and you're watching and you want to get your hands on one of these, you just need to reach out to us. fullnode@protip.is, also obviously on the Twitter. And yeah, so thanks very much for all of your time, and thank you to Dustin for joining us and having such a lively discussion about the artwork, and Janine as well for producing. And rock on. Talk to you again. Bye-bye.